Hello and welcome to Inside Music Curation. We're back. It's the team at Feed Media Group. At Feed Media Group, we help businesses use music, and part of that is curating that music. And the good people here with me today are some of our expert curators. We've got Stens, Claire, and Mike. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to dive into Lizzo and talk all about her music, how we use it in curation, and more. So let's kick off the conversation and maybe share how you came to know about Lizzo or when you first discovered her music.
Sure, I'll start. So I first heard Good as Hell from a roommate, probably in like 2016, I would say, either shortly after that came out or 2017. And yeah, sort of an undeniable, sort of catchy R&B pop. Just, yeah, really, really great song, and sort of dove deeper into that EP and found a lot of songs I really liked. And I think her song Coconut Oil sort of ended up like eclipsing Good as Hell as like a song I was like, that really showed what she can do.
Awesome.
I think I first heard about her through I used to work. I programmed radio stations for years, and that's a small community, and so you always kind of keep track of what your former colleagues are up to. And yeah, the former programmer at the time when Lizzo was first starting out, um, the programming folks over at the Current in Minneapolis were big champions, and always looked to them to see that they were the first on a lot of new music, and saw that they were on it, so it made me go, okay, need to check this out, and here we are.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt that Lizzo was making music in Minneapolis, which is where the Current is based. That's also where I first heard about her as well as a longtime listener. So
Awesome.
that's interesting. Stens, how did you stumble upon Lizzo?
The new fashioned way through Slack. It's we Slack and share music all the time, and way back in early 2019, when our curation shop was two people, our head of curation, Dario, ear to the ground always, he slacked around Juice, and I listened to it and I was like, it's dope, but it was the video, and it's really kitschy, and so I think in some respects I didn't really appreciate it till I listened to it. And then I'm like, oh man, this is amazing, right? And then shortly after he shared that, Truth Hurts and Good as Hell, both of which were older songs of hers, as Claire mentioned. And Claire's our in-house Lizzo expert. But those were older songs, and then they blew up the charts. So like really, really unusual trajectory that Lizzo had coming onto the scene, where, these old songs were so great that they had to be brought into the light, and then they just dominated. I think it was the 2019 charts, and then Lizzo was everywhere. But I want to just quickly say too that our CTO, so this is how music obsessed our company is our CTO, also named Eric. I realized when I looked at my Slack today, a full year and a half before Dario slacked Juice, he sent around the song Phone, which I hadn't actually bothered to listen to at the time. But he has young girls, and so he was already hip to the Lizzo game. And so a quick shout out to Eric. But yeah, now Lizzo is just inescapable, and thank God for that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that is so interesting in looking at her and having an excuse to just deep dive into her catalog and her history is that she seemingly arrived fully formed on the stage in 2019 as like massively talented singer and performer, dancer, rapper, everything all around. And it's like, wow, she nailed it right away. And it's like, well, no, she's been working at it for a long, long time. Claire, I think it would be really interesting to hear a little more of kind of like what that trajectory was like, and maybe your experience and perspective on it would be interesting, I think.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, she started in Houston, was in sort of like some girl groups there as well. And then was sort of more hip hop focused. Her first independent album, Lizzo Bangers, sounds a lot different than what you would hear from her today, in sort of an interesting evolution. I think she's kept a lot of her sort of hip hop sensibilities and roots, and like it is a talent she continues to develop, but has also been able to diversify so much in what she does as an artist. She was also a classically trained flautist, studied flute there, and then moved to Minneapolis, and that's sort of where I think she really started to develop as a solo artist, especially I think also was in a girl group there as well. And then yeah, also crossed paths with Prince at that point, who also then has some influence on some of her later music as well. So yeah, I think a thing a lot of people resonate with Lizzo is they can, even if you think she's an overnight success or whatever, if the second you start learning about her, you realize how much work has gone into the back end. And I think people really respect that. I think when they can see that trajectory, it really changes how you listen to their music as well. You know that there's been thought put into this process, and that it really, yeah, represents who they are, and is not just a sort of commercialized, like they were discovered, some powers that be were like, there's something here we can work with, and molded her. Like that was not the case at all. She definitely drives her own artistry and vision for the music she makes, and the visual representation of who she is and what she loves to make music wise.
Yeah, and visual representation is a big deal to her, as well as doing it her way, right? I mean, if you look at her, if you've seen any of her live performances or shows, like it is a full-on performance. She recently launched a TV show on Amazon Prime called Watch Out for the Big Girls, which is an amazing show, really, where she's like, hey, I need more backup dancers. I'm going to Bonnaroo. I'm doing bigger shows, playing bigger stadiums. I've got these 6 big girls that dance with me. I need more. And she said, I went out to the agencies, and big girls don't get representation. So you can't just go to an agency and say, send me your best big girls. They don't have any. So she started this show to go out and search and find these dancers. So it was really amazing to kind of see her work through that lens. And you can tell that she is experienced, she is driven, she is a hard worker, she cares, she's compassionate. So it's a really interesting lens into, Lizzo as an artist and as a performing artist. And you can certainly see her, all of the years of hard work that got her where she is today. And then, to see her, being empathetic and reaching out to these other girls and kind of helping them along their journey. It's a really cool experience. I recommend checking it out for sure.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go on, Claire.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's hard to have experiences with her music and her artistry, and not be changed, in just the pure delight and joy of hearing these songs that are just awesome, right? Like the most famous ones that everybody knows at this point: Juice, Truth Hurts, Good as Hell. They're catchy, they're amazing, they're fun. They reward multiple listens, which thank God, because we've heard them so much. And they all have these like incredible quotables in them that are just funny and really, really prescient and on the nose. But I think in addition to being changed just in terms of your joy experience, but this in terms of your human experience, if you're open to her and receptive to what she's using her musical platform to bring, which is more representation, which is more respect, which is more acceptance, that it's hard to not be unchanged from that experience. And I think that's part of her power, that is obviously, I think, a known dynamic that she knows as an artist, that she cultivates, that she, it's part of the whole package and brand of Lizzo, right? And it's one of the reasons that she's beloved, is that she's not just, it would be enough if she was just making stunningly great music, and she is, period, full stop. But beyond that, she's using her artistry to do other things that are very in the zeitgeist of what's happening right now with LGBTQ representation, and really important for the world. So it's like, it's very hard not to that, like I said, to be changed by that, and also to feel a real love and respect for her as an artist and a human being.
Yeah, it's hard not to be just Team Lizzo, and like not root for her. And I think like sort of the interesting transition from her roots in hip hop into like her sort of musical standing today is she would kind of get classified as a pop artist because her music is popular, not because her sound is like exclusively pop. And so I've always find that's a really interesting crossover is we will get certain artists who change what the definition of pop music is. And I think she's definitely one of those who is like, a song can have trap beats and it can have flute and it can have a church organ, and all of those elements together make a great song. And it doesn't need to, like fit into cookie cutter boxes of things. It can just be good on its own. But she can represent for hip hop, for R&B, for soul, and all of those different things, and package them together in ways that's appealing to everyone. And it's not hard to be like, like I know that's good music. That's all I need to know.
I'm interested to hear how traditional pop she goes now, because she's working with Max Martin, she's working with Mark Ronson. And then a few of the producers that she had worked with in the past, but those are the big pop names, right? So it'll be interesting to see what kind of flavor they bring, but also what she brings from her past and from her history to those guys. It's going to be a good little meld.
Yeah. One of the songs, we have an upcoming blog on some Lizzo deep cuts for anyone who's interested in learning some of the songs you haven't heard on the radio. And one of the songs is a song she did with Caroline Smith, who I'm not super familiar with. It mostly got traction being used in an episode of Broad City. But it's like a very like sunshiny, positive pop song. And this was even like pre 2016 or maybe around 2016, 2017. So I think it was sort of an early sign of, not being afraid to experiment with, genres that at the time were more outside of her comfort zone and sort of have become an evolution of what her sound is.
And I know you guys talk as curators all the time about, having genre bending artists, right? Like these artists that cross over all of these genres can be some of the most valuable when it comes to curating for businesses, curating for different use cases. I mean, maybe talk a little bit about how Lizzo fits into the curation or how that flexibility and, her broad experiences lend itself well to different types of scenarios and stations.
Yeah, well, look, it's a great point, and she's so adaptable, and it works so well functionally in so many different contexts. And I definitely think we should talk about that. But sorry, but I want to go back to one thing Claire said quickly, which is just that interesting to see where she's going to go, right? Or perhaps it was Mike, which is like she can really go anywhere with the next album. And I think that's part of the intrigue and appeal is that, she has these strong, deep roots in hip hop that I didn't necessarily appreciate till I heard her first two albums that were non-major release. And then along the way, and Claire can maybe share the anecdote, somebody was like, why don't you try singing? And she has got pipes for days and she can belt. And now it's almost hard to classify her that way. But, she's got this foundation in hip hop. She reminds me more of Lauryn Hill in a way. Like the Missy Elliott comparison is obvious, right? Like there's tons of Missy Elliott there, but Lauryn Hill was somebody that could spit fire, and she did for for an album and some change. And then she came in and she started rapping and singing. And then it was like by the time of her amazing solo album, it's mostly singing, but that was her foundation, was rapping. So she's kind of a modern day Lauryn Hill, right? And so, and one other point before we get into the functional usages, her two reveals so far with her new album, actually she's done three because there was Saturday Night Live, and she's got the song Special, which is like, a ballad where she's just, it's really soulful singing. And then she's got About Damn Time, which is obviously a super throwback to late 70s funk, like soulful funk. And then the other track though, Girls, which is a knowing winking nod to old school hip hop. So she's playing that hip hop card with integrity. She repurposes an old Beastie Boys beat, and she does it. Also, she does the act of reclamation because it's one of their most misogynist songs, which I freaking love the Beastie Boys. I grew up with them. They practically disowned the song later on. She reclaims it as something that's empowerment. So like, we don't really know what's next, right? Because she's given us these three flavors of the album. We got 9 more tracks. She can literally go anywhere.
I also know she sampled the last track on the album is called Coldplay, and she samples Coldplay's Yellow for it. So where is that? What's that going to sound like? I'm so intrigued.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I think like going into, yeah, I think she sees her place in the bigger cultural conversation, which is why she likes taking on projects like that that'll make you think, that will be repurposing and recontextualizing a song. I think like she has the respect sort of for music history to be able to do that, which is really great. And additionally, because we were sort of talking about this earlier, how she's sort of fallen into like this very quotable um, person in her lyrics, even that those are like lasting marks on pop culture. Those phrases will be around, and because the music is so well received from so many different people with like popular appeal, that it can just sort of infiltrate the zeitgeist in a way where like, even though like I think her music is pretty timeless for what it's doing, I think like there will be a time where people will forget that those phrases came from her songs. And I think that will be sort of like a true lasting impression of her artistry in that sense. And then Melissa, I know you sort of wanted to get into, you know, why she's easily curating. And I think it's the positivity. I think at the end of the day, that her ability to be mood boosting, even on like a sad song, I think sort of like the deep feelings. But just, yeah, her approach in just feel good music. I think like that's what people want in stores. That's what people want when working out or feeling empowered and all of those things. That even, yeah, if you're not quite feeling that way, you know, a Lizzo song will get you there.
Definitely. And her commitment to her word as well, right? Like understanding her platform, as Sens was talking about earlier, you know, going in, actually changing the lyrics in Girls, you know, when there was some talk about, you know, use of a derogatory term, and just going in and saying, hey, not my intention, I'm on it. I think that there's a lot of integrity to that. And I think that's another point for Team Lizzo. For sure.
Melissa, could you unpack that for a minute, just for those that don't know? Because I think it's such a great example of Lizzo, right, being responsive to this platform and also trying to be fully representative and accessible to everybody.
Yeah, 100%. So Girls came out, right? It made some waves, but she used the term spaz, correct? I think the word spaz. And so disability, people with disabilities started speaking up, saying like, hey, that's a derogatory term for us, you know, not something that we expected from you. And she kind of real quickly, you know, said, hey, not my intention. And I think, you know, in the same way that like, how do words start, right? And understanding that there are negative connotations to words sometimes that we don't even realize that have been in use for, you know, decades, and going out and saying, hey, oh, I realize like this is not an appropriate term. I can work with that. I applaud her for taking action, and we're all in this together, right? It's not about you did something wrong, or it's about saying, hey, I hear you, and I'm with you.
Yeah, she's definitely open to the conversation. And even in some of the research I was doing for the blog article, came across a few quotes from her, where she says, you know, words are so powerful. And this was pre all of that discussion, because she's talking about it more in the concept of even self-love and like how you're talking to yourself, like words are powerful, and that it's clearly something she lives and breathes by, like in her life and in her music.
Yeah.
One thing related to that, I was just going to say is that, you know, I think, and I alluded to it earlier, I think that she is very much in the zeitgeist right now of kind of blurring and bending genres, right? Which we talk about a lot, and we saw a lot in the 2010s of artists kind of breaking out of their fortified, you know, this is country, this is hip hop, this is pop, this is, you know, rock, you know, etc. You know, Lil Nas X famously did that with Old Town Road. But I think, you know, breaking out of those boundaries, but also breaking out of identity boundaries, right? Of rigid identity boundaries. And I think, I guess I just want to make a point here is, I mean, I think, you know, Prince was like almost the forefather of that, right? So like she's taking a page from his book, not only musically, but almost philosophically, right? Of like pushing it forward, like being fluid, being accessible, being open to everyone. But I think it's really brave. Like, she's a really brave artist, you know what I mean? And like, it reminds me of Lil Nas X, in addition to being a substantial artist, is so brave. Kendrick Lamar, his latest album, we talked about it on a prior live stream, super brave, using his platform for that. And then in lesser ways, like Harry Styles, with the way he dresses and the way, he's not, he wants to like be more gender fluid. I think these things are timely and they're in the zeitgeist right now. And it is partly like what's happening more broadly, but it's partly thanks to these artists for, giving visibility to it. Right. And so I'm excited about those dimensions too.
I'm excited about her arena tour that's coming up to back this album up. This is the first time she's headlining arenas. Like, that's a show. That's like a must-see show, I think. Especially with her TV show, and she's getting these new dancers, and it's gonna, like, talk about production value. Like, I can't wait to see what she comes up with. I'm very excited. Great new album coming, big tour coming. Like, love it.
What's next? Yeah. Well, thanks again. Inside Music Curation, we dive into many different topics around music curation, including the artists that we know and love and want to know better. So, whether you are a Lizzo fan or you are new to her, highly recommend checking out. She's got the new album coming out. We're all excited to see where that takes her. And check out Claire's post with some of the deep cuts, or simply go back. Lizzo Bangers, I think, is a really great album, and it's not maybe what you would expect if you've listened to the current hits, but well worth a listen. So dig into her deeper tracks, earlier records. Keep an eye out for her album and tour coming your way. Any final thoughts on Lizzo, you guys?
Claire, what's your prediction on the album? I want to hear more from you before we run out of time. What's your thoughts on the album and where she's heading?
I just think it's going to be I don't know. It's going to be interesting and exciting no matter what she does. I think like she trusts herself as an artist, and I think will, as able to, bring people along with her wherever she decides to move that needle. So I think, it'll be really fun and more show stopping, and
I think she's just going to continue to build, right, on her very large repertoire. So I'm excited not only for this album, but like you said, Mike, like after you go out on a tour like that too, how does that inform, what comes next after that? So I think we've got a lot of exciting things coming from Lizzo, near future, down the road. Definitely an artist to keep an eye on. Awesome. Well, thanks, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We're here every other week, Inside Music Curation. If you want to know more about curating music for businesses, music curation, music for apps, check us out at feedmediagroup.com. Thanks so much.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.